Welcome to a talkSPORT boxing special with myself, Spencer Oliver, and him, Mr. Cole Froch. Cole, firstly, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. You all right, Spencer?
All good, mate, all good. Now, just a reaction really, Cole. Breaking news, Conor Benn has been cleared to box September the 23rd. That's this Saturday night in Orlando. I mean, what's your initial thoughts on it?
If I'm honest, I want to see Conor Benn fighting. I want to see him out there. I want to see him getting busy again and get back to where he left off. I was really disappointed when he got fined of failing the drugs test because I was looking forward to his fight with Chris Eubank Jr. And it's just seemed to have gone on for so long. I'm almost kind of switched off of it. I'm listening to the fans and I just feel like Conor Benn's getting a lot of hate, which I don't like to see. He's a young man, he's got a lot of talent, and I think he could have a potential really, really good future in the sport. But he's got this big dark cloud hanging over him by way of a failed drugs test, and we need some answers. So to hear that he's fighting on Saturday, great, I'm pleased for him. I want him to get moving with his career, but also I want to know what's going off with him obtaining a British Boxing Board of Control boxing licence, if indeed he's allowed to get one.
Well, that's the big thing here, Cole, is that jurisdiction lifted the ban, so they lifted the suspension basically, and that allowed him to apply for a licence to box elsewhere. Hence, how he's got this licence and he's boxing out in the States at the moment. UKAD and the British Boxing Board of Control appealed that. But whilst that appeal's going on, now he's been given a licence in Orlando to box, but he's not cleared his name, and that's the big talking point here, is that he hasn't cleared his name and proved his innocence. So I suppose what I'm asking you is, do you still think that's okay for him to then be able to box in Orlando with this dark cloud still hanging over him? Because we've got to remember, we're talking about the health and safety of the sport here, and that's the most important thing. And, of course we all want to see Conor Benn back in the ring, and we want to see him, he was doing so well, and then this situation happened. He needs to clear it up before he continues his career, but it seems like his career's continuing, even though it's not being cleared up. And that's the big problem here. What does that say about boxing as a whole?
Yeah, it's a shame really, because it puts a bit of a grey area in why is he allowed to fight in Florida, but he's not allowed to fight in Britain. But I understand how it is, and it's a technicality, and I do want to see him out there. I've got to be honest, I'm talking as a Conor Benn fan and as someone who wants to see Conor Benn box, but also you have to hold the sport of professional boxing as the paramount importance in terms of the reputation and how it looks for the armchair fan. And if it just looks like they're pulling one over on the boxing board, or doing their own thing and kind of sticking a middle finger up to the correct officials and the governing bodies in Britain, I don't like that. I don't think that's very good. It's bad for the sport, and I don't think that should be happening. I presume. I mean, I've looked at the opponent. He's fighting someone who's probably not fit to lace his boots, so that always holds its own dangers. But the referee's in there, the cornermen are in there to do a job. So he's just basically get him back in, get him active, get him back into the professional boxing ring, and announce it and tell everyone he's back up and running. But actually, it's a bit of a smokescreen or a bit of a con job, because myself, I want to see Conor Benn fighting in Britain and building his career up and heading on towards world titles. And this route isn't going to happen. It's not going to work like that if you can't fight in Britain.
Conor has passed the VADA testing for this contest. He's had VADA testing in the build-up to it. He's had VADA testing just a couple of days ago, and I think he will be tested after the fight as well. So that's not the issue here. I think the issue in the dark cloud, Cole, is the situation that happened previously, which was 18 months ago now, and the ongoing it's called strict liability. You're responsible for what goes in your body, and you have to explain why it's in there, if it's in there. And I think that's where the big problem's been. And we still know closer to clearing up that situation. And I think that's maybe what's got under people's skin now, with Conor being allowed to box in a different state, in a different country, whilst this thing's still going on. And maybe that's not particularly good for the sport. Like you say, Cole, we're in a sport where people get hurt and people even die. And it's got to be a level playing field. And so until your name is cleared, I'm not sure that it's the right thing that you should be able to box somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. I know what you're saying. I totally understand what you're saying, but I can see what his management team want to do. And me personally, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I'd like to see him sit in front of the British Boxing Board of Control, have his hearing, give his explanation, tell them or explain to them what he thinks went wrong and what may have happened, accidental. I'm assuming it will be. The contamination is the road he's going down. Explain it to the British Boxing Board of Control. Tell them what's happened and take his punishment. Be told, listen, you may not know about it. You may have been contaminated. It may be an accident. We get it, but you still failed a drugs test. Therefore, you've got a 1-year ban or a 6-month ban or a 2-year ban. And when that's served, you're able to box again under a British Boxing Board of Control licence. That's what the fans and what we as broadcasters want to see happen, because that's the correct route you should take. Sure. But we kind of feel like we're having the wool pulled over our eyes, and not in a very intelligent way, to be honest. We all know that he's failed the VADA test, and we want to know why he's failed and what the ramifications are going to be of that, because there don't seem to have been any. But it's been a long time, and I know that people have been banned and served the ban time whilst they've been waiting anyway. And to be honest, they don't make a big deal about it, which is a shame. I mean, Canelo Alvarez. Didn't Tyson Fury fail a drugs test? Yeah. The list goes on. Roy Jones Jr. back in the day. There's been people, bigger names than Conor Benn, and people that worth far more money as a commodity in the boxing world, failed drugs test and then come back to carry on to fight. But because Conor Benn's, I think, digging his heels in and is in full denial, this situation isn't going to get resolved. It's not getting resolved fast. And now we're seeing him fight on Saturday. I could totally understand why the fans will be thinking to themselves, well, this is just a load of nonsense and I'm not interested. I'm turning off as far as Conor Benn's concerned, because it's just not right.
Yeah, I think that was the big problem, Cole, wasn't it? It was like a PR disaster, really, because of Conor Benn and him saying that he was innocent the whole time, and the way that it was dealt with, and then going into the egg situation, then coming away from that, then the WBC giving him a defence, etc., etc. It was just a complete mess. It was all a big mess, and maybe would have been better left alone and done quietly, as opposed to blaming everyone else, and it was everyone else's fault. And it was just a PR disaster for me.
Absolutely. If Conor Benn's going to fight on Saturday, and I'm sure he'll do the job against the guy that's not really ranked highly. Yeah,
he's boxing a guy called, I'm going to try and pronounce this right, Rodolfo Orozco. He's a Mexican kid. He's 32, 132, lost 3.
What's he ranked?
KOs. He's ranked, I think, 243 in the world and 19, I believe, in Mexico. That's where he's at.
So he'll last a round against Conor Benn, if he's lucky. But it gets Conor Benn out there. It gets him busy. And I just hope that they're doing this to get rid of any ring rust and get him into the motion of walking to the ring and getting in there and fighting under the lights and, you know, getting a kickstart back in his career. But it still begs the question, when is this going to happen? This meeting with the British Boxing Board of Control, when are they going to sit in front of the board and take their punishment for the failed drugs test? Because my understanding is that's what needs to happen before Conor Benn can move on with his professional career. And until that happens, he's basically just pissing in the wind. Yeah, well, listen, Cole, other breaking news as well is Eddie Hearn's been on Drive today on talkSPORT, and he said that negotiations between Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr., which this doesn't surprise me, to be honest, negotiations between Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. are well underway.
Have any discussions started with this fight?
Yes, absolutely, yes. I mean, Kalle Sauerland, who is Chris Eubank's promoter, we know that Chris Eubank is a free agent from a network point of view. There's been many conversations with myself and Frank Smith and Kalle Sauerland to make this fight, as I said, the biggest fight financially for both. So let's get Saturday out of the way, and then we go from there.
So that's potentially the next fight for Conor Benn if he comes through this one.
Well, that tells you, which is fair enough, but that tells you what Eddie Hearn and Conor Benn's team are all about. They're all about trying to make the money, aren't they? They're trying to get the money fights and go down that road, because that's a massive fight, and that's a fight we all want to see. I mean, do you want to see that fight, Conor Benn, Chris Eubank Jr.?
Listen, everyone wants to see that fight. It's like you're going back in history. You're going back 30 years from their old men. You know, when Nigel boxed Chris Eubank and that amazing fights that them two had, and then like the whole rivalry between the two.
Absolutely. And Eubank Jr. just had a great win. Eubank Jr. just had a great revenge win against Liam Smith.
Yeah.
Conor Benn was looking great, wasn't he? I mean, the Chris Algieri round, was it round 1 when he knocked him out? He's been looking good. Was it round 3? I mean, he was all over him, and he clipped him in that right hand and absolutely wiped him out, didn't he? It was an early knockout. And, he just looked good. He just looked really good, powerful, sharp, confident. Chris Eubank Jr. has rectified that wrong against Liam Smith, albeit against a really poor Liam Smith. But he beat the guy in the rematch. Took a lot of guts to get back in there, and a lot of strength of mind to do what he did, and character. So we do want to see Conor Benn, Chris Eubank, but we want to see it under the correct terms for the goodness of boxing, of British boxing. We need to see Conor Benn cleared correctly, take the correct measures to get his name cleared. Yeah. But we need to see him in front of the Board of Control. We need to see the Board of Control say, right, okay, you've served your ban. You've been out the ring for X amount of a month. I mean, how long has it been? What's the time
18
frame?
months, I think it's been.
So a year and a half he's been out the ring. I mean, I want to see Conor Benn's career progress correctly and go through the rankings correctly and step up, maybe fight for a British title, maybe not even bother with a British, maybe jump straight in there for an interim world title or something, because the WBA regular and there's other international belts that you could fight for before knocking on the door for a big world title. But to go straight there from fighting in Florida on Saturday, this Saturday, which he's doing, and then maybe going straight into a rubber match, if you like, for no titles, just for the names, the Eubank Benn names, I think that's a bit of an insult to the British fans and to the British Boxing Board of Control. And I don't think that's right. I don't think that should happen. I think Conor Benn needs to fight on Saturday, and then.
Do you think that he should be fighting on Saturday? By the way,
I think.
Do you think it should be happening?
I think that if he's allowed to fight and there's a technicality or glitch in the system, if you like, where he's allowed to fight while there's a hearing going off, then why not get him out there and keep him busy? You know, God forbid somebody gets badly hurt and, you know, he's taking something he shouldn't be taking, but that would be stupid. He's saying it was contamination.
To be fair, he has passed the VADA testing in the build-up.
There you go. So I haven't really got a problem with him fighting. I mean, you could get upset about it and say, well, listen, you failed a drugs test. The British Boxing Board of Control don't want you to fight. So really, you should listen to them. I've got so much respect for the BBBFC. They was in control of my whole career. I was licensed for them for every single fight for my career. I won 4 world titles and boxed. I think I had 11 or was it 12 back-to-back world title fights. And the British Boxing Board of Control are there to look after you. They're there for the health and safety of the fighter, and to make sure you don't get ill-treated by your manager or your promoter, make sure you get paid. There's all these rules and regulations in place to protect you as a fighter. So I think that should be respected and honoured. And if they're saying, no, you're not being licensed because you failed a drugs test, I think you should sort out that problem before you even think about getting in the ring and fighting, because it's almost showing no respect for the Board of Control. So that's where I'm at with it. Sit in front of the Board of Control, take your punishment, and then move on with your career.
Brilliant. Well, Cole, listen, as always, mate, great catching up with you. Thanks for giving us your initial thoughts on what's going on in the Conor Benn career at the moment and what's going on Saturday night. And look forward to catching up with you again soon, mate.
Absolutely. I'll see you Saturday night for the Joyce Zhang rematch.